What's up, guys? So we have another game. This one's a miniature. It was only 17 moves, so I thought I'd make a nice short video. I'm playing with Kyle 1963, rated 1953. Uh, it seems that I played him 4 times in total, and including this game that we just played, he beat me twice and I beat him twice, so now we're even. Basically, I went d4, he went d5, I played c4, Queen's Gambit, move orders, and he plays e5, the Albin Countergambit. And I paused here for a long time to try to remember the line. On Chessable, I have the course of, it's called D4 Simplified, by Grandmaster Alex Kolovic, something like that. So anyway, I played what he recommends, which is you take the e5 pawn, which is hanging, right? And now black's not gonna take my pawn because I'll just trade queens. He'll have to move his king, lose castling, and he's down. I don't know if he's down. Is he down 3-6? Okay, he's not down. So, but the book move is to push because you don't want the queen trade and you don't want to lose castling rights. So by pushing the pawn, now I can't develop my knight to the square that it wants to go. But what I can do is develop my other knight and attack this pawn and threaten to take it on the next turn. He develops his knight, defending his pawn, also pressuring the central pawn here. So there's probably other ways to play. I don't know if e3 is the move, maybe it is, but the line recommended in the Chessable course is g3, and developing the bishop this way now that the pawn is far advanced and can't block it on these squares, which is kind of nice. So that's what I do. I go g3. He develops his other knight. The idea with this move, and this is still part of theory in the course, I'm still in theory, is to go here and basically win your pawn back in the center. And as white, you're not trying to defend it at all costs, you're just trying to get a good position with active pieces. So I developed my bishop and now it's looking really nice on the long diagonal. He goes here, hitting my pawn twice, and it's only defended once. I just castled because you can't defend it. Going here with your bishop and giving up your bishop is ridiculous, so you let him take back the pawn, no problem. So here, still in theory actually, but even if you don't know, I guess you could reason it out. He's attacking this pawn, he's also pressuring your knight, and this knight is also in front of this bishop, which wants to be free. So taking the knight makes sense, which is what I did. He has to take back, of course, threatening this pawn. But now my light square bishop is open, this diagonal, and because his knight moved, this diagonal is also open on the light squares. However, he is hitting my pawn, so I have to find something to do, right? I can't develop my knight. If I develop my knight this way to protect, he'll just take it, or maybe. You could do something passive like queen c2, but I'm not sure how that would work out. You could try something maybe like b3, but that weakens a lot of dark squares. So queen a4 is the best move, giving a check and vacating this square for the rook to come over and pressure this way. And now, theory is c6, and that's what he played. But I was actually thinking in my head before he played c6, like what happens if he goes bishop d7? Like I wasn't afraid of it, because obviously this is hanging, and this is not hanging, this is hanging. So I was just curious what the like exact best move is in this situation. I suspect it's funny because if you can go queen d1 and like get a repetition that way if you wanted one, but why would you want that? Like, is queen b3 a move? Is this engine not working? What? Yeah, what's wrong with this engine? Why won't it show me the move? Oh, engine off, that's probably why. That might be the reason. What about now? Reload, right? There we go. Oh, wait, so bishop d7. In the course, it also talks about c6, but bishop d7, so yeah, okay, so queen b3 is the move. Okay, that's what I was looking at, so fine, that makes sense. We'll go back to what the actual moves were. Okay, so he plays c6, blocking this way, keeping this defense, you know, safe and sound. So now I have to try to figure out what to do. Developing this knight doesn't, these squares don't seem good. Putting it here blocks the bishop. So we do something that we know is definitely a good move, and that's rook to d1. Developing move, attacking the pawn, x-raying the queen. It actually sets up knight c3 developing because the pawn can't take because it's pinned, right? And if you can get your knight to c3, you can then hop it into the center, you know, just to relocate it better if you want to. Or you can stay here as long as the queen stays here. So that's like another tricky way. So I move my rook over. He develops his bishop and attacks his pawn for a second time. And I wasn't sure what to do here. I was trying to look at seeing if any of these sacks work, but it just develops his bishop. I mean, you hit this a second time, which would be nice, but the bishop defends it all of a sudden a second time. So, and there's no way to really attack the bishop, I don't think. So I didn't do that. You can't really defend this in that many ways. Knight a3 he can take with the bishop. You could do knight d2, but that just blocks everything, and you can't keep your pieces like that forever just to defend a pawn. It's better just to lose the pawn. So I did the only thing I could think of, which was b3, but I'm actually curious like what the best moves are. Okay, knight a, so they do say knight a3. So what is this? Just taking over the dark squares is no problem. Okay, so he castles, and then I just play that position up, pawn down with two bishops. I mean, yeah, you could do that. You could do that, but like, why would you do that? Bishop e3 is kind of funny because it attacks it a second time without being able to be taken. I didn't consider bishop e3. I did look at knight a3, bishop takes, queen takes. It crossed my mind for a split second. All dark squares, sack the pawn. But then I said, why bother if you could just play b3? And there's not too much downside to b3 because you do have the dark square bishop to cover the dark squares. And knight d2, but it can't stay there, so. Oh, they eventually do sack the pawn in that line. So I go b3. I don't really see a downside to it because it's not like he can attack my queen, and there's always this double pressure, which is super annoying for him, because if he moves his knight, I can always sack my bishop, maybe. And I can always kick his knight if I had some definitely working sack. So anyway, he goes queen b6, which defends these pawns. So there's no more sacks, there's no more light square funny business. It also defends this, it also vacates this for a rook. So it's a nice all-purpose move. Now the computer says I made a mistake. It says 96% accuracy. I played at like a 2800, but it also says there's this mistake in the 17 moves, so it's weird. I thought this was natural because I played b3 and I knew that created some dark square stuff, so I wanted to cover it with the bishop. At the same time, it would put another attacker, a second attacker. And also, I thought if I brought it out this on the other diagonal, right? This square does nothing. This square you can't. This square hits the knight, but after knight g6, he hits the bishop, and then what? Where's it going? So I figured if it's not going to do anything on this diagonal, you might as well put it on b2. And then I said, oh wait, he might have a tactic. If he takes this pawn, I can't take with the queen and lose my queen, and if I take with the pawn, the bishop might be hanging. But then I saw, what did I see? Takes, oh yeah, my in-between move was bishop takes here, hitting the queen. So then I'm like, okay, the tactic shouldn't work. I didn't even calculate. I figured it shouldn't work after bishop d4. And then, but the computer says it's a mistake anyway. Long castles. Hold on a second. Hold on one second. Okay, so I'm black here. I am, first of all, not thinking long castles. I'm thinking develop my dark square bishop for short castles. That's crazy. Okay, so they want him long castles, right? And so, yeah, I was going to go develop my knight. That's fine. And they're saying if he attacks my pawn, that's a problem. Is it though? What? I don't know. Am I crazy for wanting to play King f1 here? Is King f1 really dumb? The engine's like, I'm not sure. An inaccuracy, okay? Not really dumb. It's still perfectly fine. And they're suggesting another ridiculous move, but it's to defend the bishop, to prevent these tactics. That makes sense. Now that I don't have the bishop takes d4 because the knight's blocking my rook. Fine. I don't know. Calling this a mistake is a little rough. I'm not really sure about that because it's interesting. I just didn't consider long castle. It does defend the pawn though. It just seems so weird with having the pressure here to castle. So he plays here, which feels more natural to develop the bishop, but developing it here I thought was weird because for two reasons. Yes, it defends the pawn and gets the bishop out, but I thought it was weird on account of I have to develop my knight here, right? Because there's nowhere else to go, really. And once my knight's here, it's gonna go here, right? Unless there's a pawn on f5 or something. My knight's coming into e4 and your bishop's there. So I was just, but then I'm like, you know what? I also have a3 probably, followed by b4. Bishop's got to go, and then I can, if I want, go c5. I'd have to consider, but it's an option, and then possibly win the pawn after that. But I'm like, a3 or knight d2. And then I'm like, I don't know, playing with the pieces was just a little more enticing, I guess, so I went knight d2. I am curious now about a3. Or is there's there's no more sack, so I mean there's no more protection, so they can sack. Is that it? Can they sack? They can sack. Knight takes c4, but they have better moves even. Castles. Castles. d3. The refutation to this is d3. d3. And you can't take the bishop because your bishop's hanging. Okay, well. Good thing I didn't play a3. That's why I figured play with the pieces, because I said to myself in my head, which move out of the two will control and touch more squares? And I said, okay, well, a3 is only one, but the knight does touch squares, so I'm going to move the knight first, connect my rooks, complete development before him. Apparently it's saying it's basically the only good move for white, really. But it's just a developing move, so whatever, it makes sense. Developing is good. It's always good. And now he castles short, and it seems natural. In the last line we just looked at, he castled short, and he was winning after the a3 line. Now he's castled short, and I'm winning. And I thought castling was weird because it almost seems like just an automatic move you play, but once I develop this knight, I'm obviously going, like, obviously, even a 1200 rated player would see that I'm obviously going knight e4 next, and that you were supposed to stop that somehow. But he just castled, and which makes no sense, because once I go knight e4, not only like this am I going to get the bishop, which is awesome, the dark square bishop, because then mine will be a monster, but that bishop's protecting the central pawn, so it makes no sense to just let me, collapse his position like this. So I was like, okay, I instantly made this move. I didn't even think, like 3 seconds. So now he puts a rook over here saying, okay, well, if I try to save the bishop, I'll lose the pawn. He'll take the bishop, but at least I'll defend the pawn and not lose the pawn. But he didn't calculate, because I said, wait a second, puzzle rush. I'm going to take the bishop because I'm going to take it anyway, because I want the bishop so I can have the dark squares. He has to take back, and I said, oh, wait a second, I have bishop a3, boom. And I win the game. And he can try some weird stuff, but I don't, none of it's ever going to work. So I took the bishop. He took back. Boom. Bishop a3. And I knew I won here. He tried some last ditch effort b5, and I'm pretty sure like anything wins. I could take the pawn, win too, right? How much is that? Yeah, it's the same. Okay. But I did the easiest thing, and I said, okay, at least if I take the pawn, yes, I know it's winning, but then he can decide, you know what, let me save my queen. Let me just move it here, give up the rook, take the bishop, and even though I'm down material and losing, I have a queen, and I didn't want to face his queen, because queens can cause problems, you can miss tactics, checks, things like that. So I'm like, I'm just gonna take his queen, and then when he has to take my queen, because obviously I'm gonna take his rook, he's gonna take back, and then his position collapses. This thing is aimed, I can kick the knight and take the other pawn, I can take this pawn over here, move my rook over, double on this guy, like it's completely lost. So he goes b5, hitting my queen. I take his queen, and then he resigns. So, what exactly was he hoping for by playing b5? Was he not going to resign here? I don't know, but that was a good game. it only worked out that well. I mean, these are all pretty natural moves. You'd have to know ahead of time that you're going to play like a G3 system. I guess you can figure it out based on the weak light squares and the fact that this can never go back. And also this is a little weird because you're never sure exactly what's happening here. Yeah, this is all weird stuff. Yeah, you see, this seems a lot less natural. It seems fine because you're more developed, but it seemed a lot more natural to leave this pawn here and go this way. And now this guy just looks, he just beams. He just beams. Look at that, open. This knight's nice as well. Okay, that's fair. But now my rook controls a lot of squares. If you look at the armies, based on like squares, I guess you could include the X-ray just to show the true, because you know these pieces do X-ray, they do go through, and you need to look at those squares for tactics. This is all of my army, and it's a lot of squares, but it's only 3 pieces, right? I mean, if I include all my pieces, look how much of the board it's covered, and I'm barely even developed. Like, I still have a lot of these at home, but I just cover so much. He covers a good amount with his stuff, because long range pieces are great, and all the pieces are long range except the knight. All right, so he controls a lot too. I control more. White's more developed, but the reason he controls so many is because his bishops, even without moving, touch so many squares. All right, as do mine. So that's why bishops are so strong. I really like this move, bishop e3. Yeah, I really felt this was wrong when he played it. I'm like, that can't be right. And then I said, this can't be right. And then I said, this can't be right. So it was 3 just can't be rights in a row, and that was GG. But this guy beat me twice, so I gotta win the next one. But all right, we get another win. 2800 performance. Don't Albin Countergambit, people. Okay. Till next time.